said, I think they want to basically continue to do treatment on him and just see where he is after a week or so, through the treatment. So he's done a little bit there. I think he still has some discomfort, but I think they kind of wanted to shut him down and try to, give him some therapy and then see, where it goes from there.
And then Alex made it pretty clear he's
Yeah.
going to try to play. He didn't have any setbacks after shoot around.
He's available.
What kind of minute will he be on any kind of? You haven't been playing him a lot this year.
No, I mean, I'll talk to the medical guys there, but I think anytime a guy comes off of an injury like that where he's missed, several games, there's always more of a, how many consecutive minutes you play him. But I've tried to manage his minutes this year,
right,
so to speak, and try to keep them, around 25. Certainly we need him out there as much as possible. The unfortunate part is he stepped on somebody's foot and sprained his ankle, so there's not much you can do about that. But
sorry to interrupt. How do you think that plan is working? Because he said when I talked to him this morning that he feels great physically, and we're at the midway point. So how do you think that 25-minute kind of plan is working?
Well, I think there's going to be games he's going to get more than that, but if you looked at the total average for the course of the year, I think that's a pretty good number, 25, 28, somewhere in there. I think when he consecutively gets way up above 30, that's where I think you start to get the issues. Now, some of the contact things, there's nothing you can do about it, right? Steps on a guy's foot, the situation in Milwaukee breaking his wrist, like those are things. But I think when he starts dealing with like hamstrings and he's dealing with like foot sprain or foot discomfort, stuff like that, a lot of times that has been from a lot of consecutive minutes. So we've just tried to manage him. And I don't know if there's necessarily a perfect or exact science, when the game's going on. If he's feeling well, we're going to play him. I think it's more the duration of long periods of time where he gets his minutes way up, where as hard as he plays, he puts himself, I think, at risk a little bit.
Billy, you've always been good at analyzing your team and where you stand. With this stretch that you're on right now, what do you feel like? Do you like that you're doing well and sustainable, and what is you think the school's goal?
I think when you look at like the four metrics of like your effective field goal percentage, your offensive rebounds, your turnovers, just some of those things. We've shot the ball better, which I think has definitely helped our offensive rating. The two areas that I think we can improve upon and we need to get better at is, I think, of those four metrics with the free throw line, the offensive rebound, shooting the basketball, taking care of the basketball. We've done a pretty good job taking care of the basketball. We've shot the ball better, but I think offensive rebounding and getting to the free throw line, we can be better in those areas. Now, it's hard just to generate fouls, but we can have control over how well we take care of the ball, and I think we can have control over how hard we go to the glass and try to manufacture some offensive rebounds. A perfect example, playing Utah the other night, they got, I think, the third best offense in the league, and about half your offensive rating is going to be how well you shoot the ball, but they're in the top, 5, 6, 7 in the league in offensive rebounding. So you want to, whether it's free throw line or offensive rebounding, you got to get one of those up. I think we've got to try to do a little bit more of that. And then I think defensively, we're better during the course of the year. I think some of these injuries, quite honestly, have hurt our defense, especially with Alex being out and even Javonte. Those guys have been disruptors for us. I think our turnovers are way down, but we're going to have to win some games in the mud, and you generally winning games in the mud when you're not shooting the ball well. And we've got to have something else. Because I've seen, over 82 games, earlier in the year, we weren't shooting the ball particularly well, but we were kind of defending to give ourselves a chance. We can't just get to the other side where it's just like, if we score real well, we're giving ourselves a chance, because it's going to be nights we just don't shoot the ball well. It happens. And we've shot the ball better, over the last 10 or 12 games. But you're going to have a game maybe potentially where you don't shoot it well, and you got to give yourself a chance, in other ways.
Along those lines, in this 8-3 stretch, your offensive rating, as you mentioned, is 4th in the league, but your defensive rating is 22nd over that time. What are you seeing? Because earlier this season, as you mentioned, kind of defense was keeping you in games, and the offense was.
Yeah, our offense was struggling. One is against certain teams, the Clevelands, the New Yorks, teams that have kind of played too big. So we've had a hard time on the glass. That has been a problem for us. So I think getting that up, the free throw line at times, fouling teams too much. I mean, we put Donovan to the free throw line 25 times. That's a lot for just one, for a team, for a game. So I think it's the same thing on the other side, right? How well can you shot contest? Because generally, when you do a good job of contesting, shooting percentage usually drop. With Alex and Javonte out, we haven't generated a lot of turnovers or forced a lot of turnovers. And the other part is how well can we rebound the basketball and how disciplined can we be to guard without fouling, so that you're looking at it from the other side, where I talk about offense, it's the same thing defensively. And I think some of those things, whether it's the offensive rebounding or the fouling, have forced that number up a lot higher.
Billy, Jalen talked this morning that he's learned a lot from DeMar, just watching him over the years. How much do you kind of see guys on your team or even around the league kind of pull from him, a guy who plays a little bit different with that mid-range game?
Well, I think it's, and I don't know if Jalen's talking about how he plays or just his communication.
The mid-range shot.
Yeah, DeMar's mastered that. I give him a lot of credit. One thing I felt like when he came here was he got to this level for a specific reason. He does something very well. But I think with the way the game has evolved, with the number of threes going up, it's not to say that he can't make threes, because he's done that, but it's not where he takes a high volume of shots. He gets to the free throw line and obviously gets into his mid-range. But I think even more for him, and maybe what Jalen's talking about, is just the mentality part of it, of DeMar. I think that's the one thing that I see a lot of our younger guys trying to spend time with him and talk to him. And it's not so much about his game or how he gets to his spots or does what he does, because everybody's a little bit different. Like, we don't really have anybody that plays like DeMar on our team. But I think there's a lot you can take from him, from how he approaches the game and how he gets himself prepared to play.
Hey, Billy, going back to Alex, do you guys, because of the way he plays and because of his history with missing games and whether it's just nicks or bruises or what happened with the Grayson Allen incident last year, do you guys, when you guys meet, do you say, hey, let's try and get X amount of games out of Alex? Because we just know, do you guys talk about it realistically, or you just kind of just hope he has a healthy season? He hasn't had one yet. It just seems like that's his history.
Yeah, like one of the things that we had talked about at the end of last year was his availability, and he brought it up, and he and I had talked about it.
In the exit interview?
Yeah, last year, when the season ended, just his availability. To your point, the broken wrist is just kind of a play.
Right.
You can't do anything about it. But he dealt with some hamstring stuff. He had like a foot sprain. He had different issues. And, I think even talking to him, he, throughout his career, hasn't really played as many minutes in his career as he's played for us.
Right.
And I think there's an endurance that gets built up physically by playing like that. And I think he felt like he was going to try to go into this offseason and maybe do some things a little bit differently now that he was on a new team and had kind of a pretty clear understanding of what his role was going to be. But I also think, too, with the way he does play and how hard he plays, there are certain guys, I just think the way they are, they can absorb night after night after night, 36, 30, their bodies can just, endure it. I'm not saying that Alex can't endure it. He just hasn't been asked to do that for a good portion of his career. And our team, how valuable he's been, him being available is better than, having him sit. So it hasn't been so much of, hey, let's just get him 65 games, let's get him 70 games. It's been more, how do we manage maybe his minutes? And some of the, I think, talking to the medical, some of the issues last year, talking to them, and it's not like this is what happened, but you start to look at the totality of the minutes, and did he break down a little bit physically? Did some of these hamstrings, midfoot soreness, was that some of just the overall pounding and wear and tear for the number of minutes he got? So that's where we kind of structured of how can we get him to a good place. And that's not to say that every game, regardless of what's going on, like if we got to play him in a certain night, 35 minutes, we'll do that. But at the same point, too, that on a consistent basis, night in and night out, at least last year proved to put him into some tough situations.
Not suggesting you're making any changes, but some weeks back you had started Caruso and Green, and you obviously had injuries since then, and you played better. Is that now, because with him coming back as soon as off the bench, you don't do your starters, but is even at the time you said, well, this is not just a short-term kind of thing.
Right.
I don't remember exactly words. But because of circumstances since then, has that now all changed?
No, I don't think so, Sam. I'm open to that. One of the things we had talked about with Javonte and Alex was starting, then we did that in Golden State. And then Javonte kind of got hurt, so we went back with Patrick. Patrick's played pretty well. Javonte, since that point back in Golden State, has been in and out since then. He's had some games he played and he hasn't played, so we really hadn't had the opportunity to do that much. And then with Alex being out here several games with his foot, we just haven't done it. I'm not opposed to it. I thought that when Alex started, he did a good job. I think Io did a good job coming off the bench. But I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not, with where our team is at health-wise here, certainly these last 10 days, it's been hard to really make, because we've gone into some of these games with, like, I don't know what game it was, we played with an 8-man rotation, you know, where we had obviously bigger numbers to work with than we did in that game. And that's not to sit there and say that I couldn't put in Dalen or somebody else. I don't mean to say we only had 8 players to play, but those guys, those 8 players had been in the rotation. You kind of went with them. But I'm not, as you know, we get whole and we get healthy, you know, looking at what may be best for the team.
Thanks, Coach.